Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and I'm finally ready to bring you my very last Hall of Horrors book review for the Hall of Horrors book series. And it's book number one, Claws. I have to say, this book subverted my expectations a lot. I didn't do that going into it, but man, this book really surprised me with the twists and turns it went down. I was really taken back by the mature themes and some directions and the out of the box thinking Stein had with this story. And this is coming from a person who hasn't read the Cry of the Cat book yet at the time of reading and reviewing this book. But I have to say, I'm really impressed with this. I wasn't expecting to enjoy it as much as I did. I'd even go around to say that I might love certain things about this book. Off the bat, if you haven't read Claws, this is a great book, and I'm glad I chose this one to end the series on. It gave it kind of a lighthearted, more uplifting feeling for the series. By the way, I decided to go about reading the books in the order I did, and yeah, I have nothing but really good things to say about this one. So yeah, let me get into the plot overview without giving too much away. So all you need to know is this kid named Mickey and his best friend Amanda are neighbors. They've grown up around each other. Mickey's pointed out in the story that Amanda's just always been there, so that's why they've been friends for pretty much their entire lives. And a neighbor couple who has a pet cat named Bella um, is going out of town for a few days. They're going to go vacationing and go sailing somewhere, like I think in the Pacific or something. And Mickey and Amanda have been tasked to babysit Bella for a few days, and they're going to get paid $50 a day. All they have to do is come in and feed the cat, give it some attention, and clean its litter. So it sounds fine and dandy with Mickey and Amanda. They set up arrangements to where Amanda will, feed and pet the cat, and then Mickey will, you know, shovel the crap out of the litter box. So the first day goes off without a hitch, but then like within the next day or the day after following that, this really tragic event happens, and this happens early on in the story, so this isn't a spoiler. One day they come in and they were arguing about divvying up the chores for the cat, switching it up, and then Bella escapes out of the front door they leave open, and Bella runs out into the road and gets hit by a truck, and is presumably killed by this truck driver. And he gets out of the truck and he expresses how sorry he is to the kids. And when they realize they have to go get the body and muster up the courage to tell the couple that their cat died because they were fighting and they weren't paying attention, the cat disappears. And this freaks Mickey and Amanda out, and they start to panic and they come up with this idea to find a copycat, literally a copycat, to replace Bella with. So they find this store called Cat Heaven, and they see it on the map on their phone, and they say, "Oh, this is the way to get there." Amanda knows how to get there, so they head to Cat Heaven. And when they arrive there, they notice how huge this place is. And when they walk in, they say this place is like a huge Walmart, and there's endless aisles of just cats everywhere. And they're going around trying to find a perfect cat that resembles Bella. They encounter some workers, this really weird girl named Lucy, who's like very enthusiastic, and then this huge guy. I want to say his name is Leo or something like that, but I could be wrong. I'm going to stick with just calling him Guy because I don't really remember his name. But this guy seems to be really pushy, trying to get them to get a free cat. he's like that kind of worker, very just pushy salesman type. And Mickey and Amanda just aren't finding the right black cat that looks like Bella. And then when they're clowning around in one of the aisles, Amanda accidentally pushes Mickey into a keep out door. And they both enter the room and they realize it's like ice cold in there. They can see their breath in this room. And they notice that there's cages in there with animals inside, and there's more cats. And when they go to examine one of the cats, they realize that one of them looks just like Bella. There was a part in the story that happens earlier on where there's bubblegum that accidentally gets stuck on the back of Bella's tail, and they have to cut it off, and they leave a bald spot on her tail. And that plays a factor in later in the story. But at first, they start to notice how similar this cat looks to Bella, like the same hair, the same mannerisms, the same eyes. This is the perfect clone. However, the keep outdoor is there for a reason. They have to figure out a way to get this cat and take it home. So one of the workers handed them a button to push when they're ready to, call a worker to get a cat. And they're about to push the button, and the guy worker walks in, says, "Hey, you're not supposed to be in here. You got to leave." And they're like, "But we want this cat." And he's like, "You can't have this cat." It's very eerie and weird, but they don't know what to do. So they're like, "Okay, we'll come up with this plan to kind of distract the guy, and then we'll come back and try to take the cat." So Amanda comes up with this diversion, and Mickey takes the cat, what they call Bella 2, and he's gonna try to sneak out the back door that's also back there as well. And when trying to do that, the male worker notices and tries to chase Mickey down. And after fighting with the door, he gets out, and the worker just chases him down. They manage to find a bus, and they get on the bus, and the worker's still chasing after him, saying, "Stop, please wait." Something feels off about the situation. Like, Mickey and Amanda are like, "Why is this guy so enamored by us taking a cat? I mean, there are so many cats there. Why do they care if we take this one?" So anyway, Mickey and Amanda decide to take the cat home and get it acclimated, because they're going to have to try to pass this cat off as Bella. So they get it acclimated, and very early on, they discover that this cat's very weird. It's very mean. It attacks Mickey. It's kind of ferocious. And Mickey is pretty startled by the cat. But later on throughout the story, Mickey starts to hear cat howling in his room at night. And he has these 3 pet goldfish and a pet mouse that kind of play a factor to the story. And one night, he hears this howling in his bedroom, and he goes to check his fish in his bowl, and it's pretty graphic. There's some animal violence in the story. So the fish have basically been mutilated to death. There's like bones everywhere, flesh everywhere, heads just floating in the top of the tank. And this really upsets Mickey, and he's starting to think that something weird is going on. He's being followed around by these cats, and he's starting to think that he might be going crazy. The next day he goes to school. He's pestered by these cat noises, and he makes a scene in his classroom, and everybody thinks he's crazy, but he's like, "Hey, you gotta believe me. These sounds are actually happening. I don't know. Can't you hear these sounds?" And everybody's like, "No, I can't hear what you're talking about." And when he goes to tell his best friend Amanda, Amanda thinks he's crazy, and Amanda doesn't believe him. So Mickey's kind of all on his own. There's kind of a connection that he was the person that took the cat out, and when he took the cat out, there may or may not have been other cats that escaped, but that also plays on the hand further in the story. Basically, it comes to another point in the story where Mickey, he's in his gym class. He's been tormented by these cat sounds. His fish died. Nobody believes him. He's very shaken up, and he has this really eerie encounter in the shower where he gets confronted by a whole group of cats, and he gets attacked. And everything happened to him. Everything that happened to him was real. But when people come to confront him, like, "What's going on in here?" He's by himself, and he has scratches on his face. He has hair. He has cat hair all over him, and he's like, "I must be going crazy, or something weird, something supernatural is happening." And Mickey can't put his finger on it. And then by himself, he comes to this conclusion at some point in the story that he needs to take the cat back to cat heaven after he keeps seeing these 3 same guys walking around the premise of his school. And at one point, they see him and recognize him, and he has to go hide in a locker to escape them. Like, these guys are mean business. They're trying to tell him something or get something from him, and he implies that they just want this cat back. So he goes by himself to the house without Amanda, and he gets the cat into a cat carrier and takes a bus to cat heaven to drop the cat off. And he's immediately confronted by the guy worker saying, "You can't bring this cat back here. You're stuck with the cat." And he's pretty much thrown into a realization that whatever he's going through is because of his own doing. But at that point in the story, there's no real solution for what he's going through. And when he confronts Amanda about it for the last time, he goes over to the neighbor's house with Bella, and she's like, where was Bella? And he was like, I tried to take her back. He's like, what do you mean? Why'd you try to take her back? And he goes, all this stuff has been happening to me. And then the neighbors come home early from their trip. And then there's a big revelation that happens, a big twist that happens, dealing with what Mickey was going through. And it gives an answer to the whole cat heaven debacle about maybe why certain things were going on with the Bella 2, and it gives an answer to Mickey's problem. But Mickey's confronted with the realization that he's basically cursed now, and he's going to be tormented by potentially a dozen cats that may or may not be dead. Okay, so he's freaking out, and he has a solution in mind where it's heartbreaking for him. This is probably the most heartbreaking part of the story. He goes to his house, and he goes up to his room, and he grabs his pet mouse that he loves dearly. This is his favorite pet. And he heads back to the neighbor's house, and he has a solution that might work to the answer that the neighbors provided, and it magically did work for his situation. Unfortunately, something may or may not have happened to his mouse. And then the story kind of resolves itself. Everything gets reset, and everything goes back to normal, it seems. And then a twist happens where Mickey may or may not get a happy ending, and that's essentially where the story ends, and it's pretty lighthearted, and I really enjoyed that. So, yeah, in a nutshell, that is Claws. Let's start off with the strengths about this book. What I enjoyed about this story is Mickey as a character. It is a you gotta believe me-esque story, but Mickey is one of those characters when he's in that situation, kind of reminiscent to Ghost in the Mirror. After trying to plead with people and people aren't listening, he takes matters into his own hands and settles it himself. And I commend characters like this. Also, Mickey is super sympathetic. I feel like he's just a good-hearted kid just trying to do the right thing the whole book. There's really nothing mean about this character. He has a lot of backability to him. And I think as far as sympathetic Goosebumps protagonists, he's up there. Like, it's hard not to like Mickey. Amanda gets kind of annoying at points, but Amanda's really not the main character. It is centered around Mickey. So yeah, on the protagonist level, I really like the way Mickey was fleshed out. This out-of-the-box concept and some mature themes throughout the story are very present. There comes very adult decisions Mickey has to make in this story, which is very uncommon in Goosebumps, where characters have to be selfless to the point Mickey had to be selfless, and it deals with terms of like sacrifice and, you know, doing something for the greater good, even if it kills your soul and makes you sad. That's what this book touches on, and it's very weird to see that done in a Goosebumps book, but in something like this, and the metaphors this story was using with like life and death, I think it was pretty warranted. And some of the scenes were pretty unnerving. It kind of reminded me, whenever I thought about this cat, for some reason, if you have ever seen the Tales from the Dark Side movie, there's a story in that movie. It's like a trilogy anthology movie with like 3 stories in it. The second story deals with a black cat. For some reason, Bella reminded me of this cat, and I had my initial thought was it was going to go like really dark, but the way it went subverted my expectations, and it actually gave me a more uplifting story out of it. And I have to say, I came out of this book with an overwhelming amount of positivity by the end. I feel like Mickey was a character, like he's just good-hearted. He just made a really bad decision, and he was facing an ultimate decision, but he actually got himself out of a really crappy situation, which characters rarely do, and it just made it stand out for that reason. I think Stein was trying a different solution, because he does basically the same, when it comes down to the realization with things like this, he does like the same thing in every book sometimes. This one definitely did a U-turn or an opposite turn from the norm. Also, the pace was really well done on this. I really couldn't knock the pace. I was really enthralled. I kept at the story and I read it. It did take me a couple days to read it on and off just because I was busy with work, but I was excited to come back and read this every time I picked it back up, and I finished it pretty quickly given the circumstances. So, yeah, really enjoyed it. The only thing I have a negative with, now this one's a pretty heavy-hitting one, but it's not as heavy as you would think. Biggest heavy-hitting problem I have with this is that there's this element dealing with the cats, of life and death metaphors, and that plays into what Mickey goes through throughout the story. To me, there's literally no explanation to how this concept works. it just it's just there. It's just there. And this is very common, especially in the original 62, where you have these ideas, these really cool things going on, and there's no explanation, and nobody really ever brings it up as a big problem. But, you know, as I've gotten older, I start to look for more context. I start to look for more signs and definitive answers when I read books. And this one, I mean, I have to point it out. And it's going to be obvious if you have read this or haven't read this and you decide to read this. It's an obvious plot hole that's going on in this story. And it's there. And it never gets resolved. And it makes the ending just feel like, okay, well, the answer we got kind of explains it. But it's such a far-fetched explanation even for a story that deals with the supernatural like this, that I still have a hard time believing it, if that makes any sense. But other than that, I really enjoyed it for what it was. And I would dare say, I was on the fence giving this a 4.4 or 4.5, and I'm just going to be honest. I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5. I only deducted 0.5 off the big glaring plot hole throughout this book. But I was pleasantly surprised and taken back by this. This was one that I had no real expectations going in, and it actually defied what I thought was going to happen many times, and it defied my expectations even. So, yeah, I highly recommend this one. This one's an A 4.5 out of 5. If you haven't read Claws, try it. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Claws. Let me know in the comments section down below. Did you love this book or did you hate it? I'm dying to know, and I'll see you next time.